Okay, well, today, as we talked about before, we're going to do residential grading. Uh, this site hopefully looks familiar. This is what we used in the Civil 3D Bootcamp training today, or in the fourth quarter of 2008. This project Lancaster office did, so I'm going to go through this and take this into some more detail. And we're not going to grade out the whole site today in 1 hour. It's not that efficient. But we will get our bulk grading looked at and get some preliminary cut and fill volumes with the software. And it's really the technique I want to show today is with everything that I try to do in Civil 3D, and hopefully others are catching on to this as well, is you can now really look at projects with a machete, then a steak knife, and then a scalpel. And what I mean by that is, you come through, take a big swatch through to clear things out and get some maybe bulk earthwork volumes, get those road profiles set. Then you come back in and maybe add the houses, figure out some first floor elevations, and then so that would be the steak knife step. And then the third step would be to use your scalpel and come in and put maybe the swales in between the houses and the grading behind it. And the reason you want to do that is because once you start into that scalpel stage, if you make major changes in the road profile elevations, you're going to be redoing work. Civil 3D is not dynamic that everything will just automatically update if you change your road profile up and down 50 feet, that all the lots will regrade themselves. It doesn't work like that. You'll have to go back and redo work still. So we want to get those major changes out of the way up front. And then once we go in with our scalpel or our steak knife, we don't have to worry about those, and we're not wasting any time or doing any redo work. So let's go ahead and figure out how to do this. With any residential site, of course, we're going to use a corridor model to do these roads like we did before. Just want to show some tricks on how to do these effectively, and this will be some new stuff that I've learned since boot camp class and so on and so forth. So let's get rolling here. Before I guess make that, let's just review. I do have already set up the alignments for this project. Okay, and I also have the profiles set up. So I just took a preliminary guess here on where grade might be. Now my guess might be better than yours off the beginning because this project was already done, so I did take a look at that a little bit so I can get fairly close here within this hour. I have to streamline some of this stuff. And so we're going to be using that. So that's all that's in here at this time. So if I unload the XREFs, the only thing that you have in this project is some alignments and some profiles. That's it. All right, so I want to get my corridor model started. First, I'm going to need an assembly because I don't have that done. A corridor model, of course, requires three things. It requires an alignment, a profile, and an assembly. An assembly is essentially your typical section. So I'm going to go up to my Civil 3D pull down here. I'm going to go to corridors. I'm going to hit create assembly. I'm going to call this tip section. Just keep it real short here, tip sec. Hit OK. I'm going to place that on my, just some line work I created here just to keep myself lined up and keep people from drawing in my assembly areas here. So that gives me my assembly stick. And I want to put some sub-assemblies on this, so I'm going to get my HRG palette or my AutoCAD palette open. And I'm going to switch to my C3D Imperial group there. So once I switch that C3D Imperial group, that will bring up these tool palettes. I'm going to go up to the Imperial roadway, and the road slopes that I want, or the road section I want, is always going to be this lane outside super. Lane outside super is the typical super elevation roadway section. It doesn't need to be supered, but if you use this lane outside super assembly, which just has the paved sections through it, if you do apply super elevation to a road, that assembly is made for that. So I always go with, use that right off the bat, so that if you do add any supers at any point in time, your sub-assemblies are already set up for it. So I'm going to use lane outside super. I'm going to attach this. As soon as I click it, my palette box will open up here. I'm going to attach this to the right and the left. I already know my road width is 14 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. There's my right side. Do my left side. Okay. And then hit enter. So those are my two lane slopes there. And, you know, I could have went through and set up these section intervals through here. So if I right-click on one of these and hit Subassembly Properties and go to the Parameters tab, these are all the pavement thicknesses. But at this time, I really don't know that. It's very conceptual, very beginning of the project, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to let them go. I can set those at any point in time since everything's all dynamic. They'll switch if I do cross-sections. Wouldn't normally do that on a residential project, but if I do cross-sections or quantities, you can switch these at any time and it would update everything. The next thing I want to do is get some curb. Now, fortunately, we had some folks set up some 8-inch curb, and that's what I want to use. I know this project originally wasn't done with 8-inch curb, but for this example, I'm going to use 8-inch curb, essentially because I can show this next little tip. And what we have here at HRG is if you go into the HRG Palettes group and go to HRG Design, you'll see we have some assemblies in there prefabbed already. A new one that you might not have seen yet is this overlay and widening with curb. So that's one that was set up by one of our guys here in the HOP group, and you know, set up for convenience. So essentially, you can just click on this and go ahead and flop it right down in the drawing, and it's a complete assembly through and through. Now, you'd ask, why am I doing that? You know, we're not doing an overlay and widening. Well, because I want to get this curb off. He set this curb up already. You know, he has the appropriate, you know, height and you know, the setback for the curb deflection and so on and so forth, and the subgrade. And I'd like to use that. If I just grabbed one of the Civil 3D generic curb subassemblies, it wouldn't have all the numbers set up in it, and I'd have to go through and figure, you know, really have to know that subassembly, set all the variables appropriately, and then go from there. Well, I can save that time if I just pull off any of these. You know, we're trying to get more and more of these, and then I can click on this subassembly and hit Copy To. So I right-click on it, hit Copy To, and I can copy it down to my assembly. So I'm going to snap it right here to this top point code, and you can see it copied that subassembly down. Well, at this point now I can mirror that, so I'm going to right-click on here and hit Mirror, and I'm going to click on the other point code on the other side. So you can see how the point there, the tip being that as you see more and more subassemblies here, if you want to pull certain pieces off of them, these are assemblies, I'm sorry, so pull certain pieces off, just insert them in your drawing. You can copy and move subassemblies off of there. Unfortunately, we can't nest preset subassemblies into this list, so we have to add the whole assembly. Okay, so we're in good shape there so far. One thing we have to do is, if you remember from boot camp, if I click on the assembly marker, right-click, and hit Assembly Properties, I had to go to the Constructions tab. Whenever you copy or mirror subassemblies, they don't take the name with. This just says right 53 and left 54. Well, those two subassemblies are the left and right curb. So I want to get those named appropriately. To do that, I need to know their name. And the easiest way to know their name is to just hit OK out of this dialog, right-click on the subassembly itself, hit Subassembly Properties, go to Parameters, and then you can see here's the subassembly name. So I'm just going to highlight over that and copy it, go to the Information tab, and paste that in here. It goes, and do the other side. And this, you know, why am I doing this? Why do I need to know this? Well, it's very important that you keep your subassemblies organized. the projects that I see that get in trouble, or when people get in trouble, is if they're just disorganized people. You're going to get bit at some point. I think we've all, know that about CAD in general. You have to be organized. So keeping organized along the way is important. Now, if I go back into that assembly properties, go into construction tab, I can see these are my 2 lanes. This is the left of the road or the right of the road. This group, this is the left of the road. This is my lane and my subassembly, or my curb subassembly. Okay, so we're ready at that point. Let's go back over to our plan view here. Hit minimize on this. And we're ready to make our corridor model. So we're going to come up, going to go to create simple corridor. I'm going to call this site corridor. It's asking for a baseline. I'm going to just hit enter and select my main street. The alignment names here, the main street is going up through the main part of the site here. The cul-de-sac is, of course, this cul-de-sac coming off, and this stub road is this little stub road coming up to the north side. So I'm going to start off with my main street, hit OK. It's asking me for a profile. I'm going to hit enter again. I'm going to select my Main Street design, which is that design profile I have. You wouldn't want existing grade. I want to select my design profile, hit OK again. And then it's asking me for my assembly, hit enter. Wouldn't want my overlay and widening with curb. No, I'd want my typical section, so I'd click that and hit OK as well. Asked me for some daylighting. I'm good to go here. I don't want to daylight anything or set any targets, so I'm just going to hit OK. And you can see it's going to go ahead and it's going to draw in the paved section, hatching the paved section, and actually drawing in some curb and fill in the curb there for us. So that's the one drag coming down through. Let's add the other alignments to that corridor. And I see this is a common thing that people aren't doing. They'll make a corridor model for each alignment. You don't want to do that. Just go into this same corridor, this site corridor model in your prospector, hit properties, go to the parameters tab. We're going to hit add baseline. So it's going to ask us for an alignment. We're going to select this cul-de-sac alignment, hit OK. And over here, we need to fill out some things. So we're going to fill out the profile. So again, click on that. We're going to hit cul-de-sac design 02. Just look for your design profiles, the ones that you actually drew on there and designed out where the road's going to be. We'll always have design in the name. Hit OK. And then we need to, some people get stuck at this point too, where they'll hit OK, and then, for example, if I just hit OK, and they don't see anything happen, and they're, what do I do? What's going on? Well, a common thing that folks miss if you go back into corridor properties, you have to right-click on this baseline and hit Add Region. Because if you remember, we only got to the steps where we added alignment and a profile. It means 3 things, right? Alignment, profile, and a typical section. Well, we never told it the typical section. So I right-click on baseline 2, hit Add Region, then come down and tell it typical section. And you can see that's that region underneath. Again, for good housekeeping, I'm going to name these baselines Main Street cul-de-sac. Okay. Let's add in our final region as well, or baseline. Hit add baseline again. Going to add in the stub street. Name the baseline. Tell it my profile. It's going to be design profile. Hit OK. Go ahead and add a region. And that region is going to be targeted to my typical section. Hit OK. And now you can see it drew in the other areas of the road. Let's go back into my corridor properties again. I want to set up some things here, so I'm going to minimize these columns a little bit so I can see more. And one thing I want to set is my frequency for each baseline. Right now, this assembly is calculating the road slope and drawing in a curve face every 25 feet. So it's 25 feet, putting in a section, 25 feet, putting in a section, 25 feet, calculating the slopes and everything, so on and so forth all the way down through. I want to switch that up. If I click here on the frequency ellipsis at the very top, I can tell this to be 10 feet along the tangents, 5 feet along the horizontal curves, and 5 feet along the vertical curves. Then I'm also going to tell it to put in a cross-section or calculate a cross-section at my high and low points. Hit OK. Do the same thing for each baseline. Now, why am I not addressing the along spirals? Because we don't have any spirals. I've never really seen or worked on a project yet that has a spiral, but if you do, you'd have to set that as well. Okay. So we're good to go there. Another thing while we're in here, instead of popping back and forth all the time, I want to go ahead and create a surface right away off of this corridor. So I'm going to go to my Surfaces tab. First I need to create the surface down here. So I'm going to hit Create Surface. And this just names it generically. So I'm going to call this Corridor. I guess Site Corridor would be appropriate. Now, although the surface is made, there's nothing for it to build off of, so I need to tell it either to build from the feature lines that the corridor generates or the links. I'm going to go off the links and tell it to be the top links. So I'm going to hit the blue cross there. And one thing you always want to set here is your overhang correction. So if you have two top links overhanging each other, it's going to use the top of the top link, if that makes any sense. Hit OK. And it's going to build a rudimentary and rough surface through here. Now you're going to get goofiness here where the corridors overlap because it's trying to hold a typical section of 2% cross slope, and this is coming through as well. So how can we fix that? Well, we can just highlight the corridor, which is the hatch pattern or any of the curved line work it draws, and grip the little double triangle grip you'll see here. I can drag this back. When you do drag these, it's going to be a little sticky, so you just have to go slow, and I'm going to snap it to the curb radii right here. When I do drag that back, what's that doing is it's adjusting the region length for this stub road. So I'm going to go ahead and have to rebuild my corridor. So I'm going to hit Rebuild here, and then you'll see everything update, all the line work, the hatch pattern, and the grades. So it's a little rough in here yet. We'd have to do that intersection a little bit later, but that's a detailed element. And let's go into the corridor properties and see what we just edited. So go right-click on Corridor, hit Properties, go to the Parameters tab, and you can see my stub road baseline now, instead of ending all the way at the end station of 320, that's how the zero station is up to the north here. So the end station is down here. 3 plus 2078. Instead of the region going all the way to the extent of my alignment, I told the region to stop short of the alignment length. I could also set it right here by clicking on that icon there and picking a point in the curb radius. Quite frankly, if you want to do it this way, this would be a little quicker. It's not as sticky when you're using these icons and picking where the regions start and stop. Hit OK again. So I don't have to keep rebuilding this corridor manually. Every time I make an adjustment, I'm going to change it to Rebuild Automatic by right-clicking on it in Prospector. And I'm going to go clean up the other parts of the project here. So we've got the same situation here as well. I drag this and snap it to the curb radii. Okay, and also come down here at the start of the project and snap this to the end of the curb radii. And same thing for over here. All right. Doing the intersections through here will be another step. We're not going to do that right now. I want to really, my first goal, what I'm trying to get towards right off the bat, is I want to get a rough cut and fill number. Okay, so I have enough road geometry in there to get me started. The next part you typically know on a project, this was a sketch plan done. You typically know what the extent of where your design wants to go out to. So we're going to use that to leverage that to our advantage. What I want to do is I want to make a perimeter feature line that goes around the entire site here. So I'd go take a feature line going all the way around, all the way around, all the way up through here. And that feature line is really going to be where I want to tie into existing grade. So I'm going to tell the computer, it's going to read this corridor through here for its proposed grades, but I'm going to tell the contours that they must tie in by the time it gets to this property line. So how would I go about doing that? Well, I'm just going to use my polyline command and go and start snapping to my limits. So right on my property line here. And this is really objective. As you're designing, you can put this wherever you need it to be. I'm just going to go ahead and snap to the extents here, and really the right away is my extent through here. So I'm going to use my apparent intersection snap. And so on and so forth. I'd keep going around. So once I have that polyline traced around my ultimate limits, I want to offset that in a little bit just to give myself a little leeway to the property line, maybe for some silt fence or just a little fluff room there. And I want to drape that onto my existing grade. Well, I already have the existing grade surface data referenced into this project. And like we talked about in one of the posts and also at the CAD or the engineering designer meetings, is that we want to have that data referenced EG surface set to no display. So the contours you see here are from, I'm looking at them through the XREF. This surface I just brought in because I need to reference it for different things using Civil 3D commands, but I don't want to see it. I just want it to be set to no display. So that's already in here. Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to make this polyline a feature line. So I'm going to go up to my feature line toolbar and use the Create from Object. I have a couple sites here. Stock out of the template, you always have the grading master, and there's a parcel proposed, which I renamed, and then there's a survey. To keep things simple for yourself, if you don't want to get confused and you have too many here, you can always delete some. So I'm going to hit cancel there. If I go over to sites, say this survey site, I started a brand new drawing for this corridor model, and I don't want to have this get in my way. I don't want to select it by mistake. I'm just going to go over here and delete that. You're safe to delete a site if there's no dots, black dots in front of it. That means this thing is empty anyways. So I can go ahead and delete that survey site. The temp grading site, there's nothing in it right now. I do have some feature lines pre-nested for this class today in my grading master. You can see what I was talking about by the black dot. So I wouldn't want to delete this grading master site. If I would do that, these feature lines would delete as well. So I'm going to use this grading temp site just for this example here. So I don't want my feature lines to cross out what I already have in there because I already have this traced around that I'm going to pull up in here in a second. But just to let me show you how to do this, I'm going to go ahead back into this Create feature line from object, click that polyline. I'm going to set this to my grading temp. Normally you'd set it to your grading master, but for today's class I'm going to set it to grading temp. Accept the defaults here and hit OK. So that turns this into a feature line. But if you see, let's switch this up into split my view here so you can have a 3D view. That feature line now is, right here. If I look at it straight down, if I look at it from a 3D perspective, you can see it's still at 0, 0. So the next thing I want to do that I found work the best is add these insert elevation points. So I'm going to go ahead and look for the, on your feature line toolbar, it's a little green dot. And what this is going to do is if I click this feature line, I can add elevation points along it. And I'm going to add those in at a certain interval. So I'm going to choose I for increment. And then my interval is going to be every 20 feet. And you can see them pop up there. And what an elevation point is that's different from a vertex is if I added a vertex every 20 feet, when I would grab this line and slide it over, it wouldn't act the way it just did. An elevation point only holds elevation. So each point here along this feature line can have a different elevation, but if I grab the main vertice, which is this square up here like a normal AutoCAD line, their X and Y coordinate are controlled along this line, so they basically stay in line. So it's a nice little feature that we didn't have in Land Desktop that we do in Civil 3D. And really that's all I want is elevation points along this. So it's still at 0 elevation, and I want to bring that up and drape it onto the surface, so the existing surface. So I'm going to go ahead and use this Elevations from Surface tool in the feature line toolbar. And I'm going to, it asks me to select which surface, and I'm going to say my EG surface. And I'm going to not check this Insert Intermediate Grade Breakpoints. And I'll tell you here in a second. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to select that feature line. And you can see it brings it up to elevation and drapes it onto my EG. Now, why did I do it this way? The reason I've done it this way by creating a feature line and then adding the elevation points at a standard interval is because I find that it pulls a nicer surface because you have nice even intervals here where it's creating the triangulation for your project. So it's just a method you can use. Another way I could have done this is instead of, I'm going to undo back here to before where I added those elevation points. So I'm back to where I don't have any elevation points again. Still store feature line, okay. Instead of adding the elevation points, another option is I could have just went right to this Elevations from Surface command, pick the feature line, and told it to Insert Intermediate Grade Breakpoints. I'll hit OK, pick that feature line, and then what you see is it adds the elevation points, but it adds them based off of where their slope changes on the existing grade. Also, you can see they're sort of random. These two are pretty close together. These are pretty far apart. It really depends on what your existing surface is. This is probably this is a closer match to perfect existing grade. Sorry about that. To perfect existing grade, but like I said, it doesn't pull as nice as if you add elevation points and then just drape those elevation points right onto the existing grade. So I would do that for all the way around the site and end up with this line, okay? So I just did, elevation points, a longer line length, went to the back of my lots, and so on and so forth, and pull this onto my layer, correct layer here as well. And we're ready to go to add this to our proposed surface. So I'm going to go over here to my prospector, and as you can see, I only have two surfaces. I have an existing grade surface and a site corridor surface. Now this site corridor is generated directly off, this is just a corridor, directly generates this corridor surface. I'm going to make another surface. I'm going to right click on surfaces, hit create surface. I'm going to change this to FG, or name this FG. Okay? I'm going to hit OK. For effect here, so you can see it, I'm going to actually take this site corridor surface. I'm going to hit surface properties. And I'm going to change this to one of these user-defined or reference styles down here. So I'm going to go ahead and change that, click that to there, hit OK. And what that did is you can probably hardly see it on the webinar software, and maybe I need to make it a little darker. Yeah, let me do that. So I want to, there's some lines here on the screen, but they're very dark, so I think through the webinar software you probably don't see it. I'm going to right-click on that surface again, hit Edit Surface Style. Takes me right into the style editor. And here's my, these user-defined, or these reference styles here are just, everything's on layer 0, and it's basically just manually setting the colors and everything. So I'm going to change this to maybe color 8, just so you can see it. All right, hopefully you can see that now a little bit better. But those contours are still there, it's just a darker style. And what I want to show here is this next thing is called a surface paste. So I have this FG surface created, but there's nothing in it. And what I want to do is I want to paste in the, let me turn off my phone here, sorry. I want to paste in my corridor surface. So I'm sort of creating this linked chain. The site generates this surface. This surface I'm now going to paste into this surface, into my FG surface. So I'm going to, this makes this, I'm going to paste this into here. And they're all dynamic. So to do a paste, I'm going to go down to the Edits category and under my new FG surface, right-click on that, and hit Paste Surface. And as I'm doing this, you're thinking, what? Why is he doing this? What is he doing? You'll see here in a second. Just follow my workflow here. Try to pay attention to what I'm doing, and then it will become apparent why. So I don't want to paste in my EG. I just want to paste in my site corridor surface. So I'm going to hit OK there. And what now you should definitely be able to see contours. The contours you see on the screen are actually from this FG surface, which is an exact match of this site corridor so far. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some feature lines to that FG surface. So my site corridor at this point, I'm pretty much done with it. I'm going to right-click on it, hit Surface Properties. I'm going to set this to No Display. So I don't really see, the site corridor surface is just a vessel that I can have this corridor generate a surface directly from all the stuff, and then I can paste this into my FG. And I'm going to add some more information to my FG now. What am I going to add? Well, I'm going to add this perimeter feature line that goes all the way around the site. So I'm going to hit Q Select, select from entire drawing, multiple objects, and I'm going to tell it to be layer. So essentially, my Q Select command is going to allow me to select everything on my C3D surface feature line layer. Hit OK. The only thing that's on there, that layer so far, is that perimeter feature line. I'm going to go under break lines under my FG surface, hit add, change this distance, my supplementing distance factor to 5 feet, and my mid-ordinate distance to 0.01. If you don't understand what those mean, give me a call, 213 anytime. I've covered it a lot of times. I don't want to go over it and be a dead horse. You can also just see the help, but they're important to set those every time. So it's distance 5, mid-ordinate 0.01. Look at the help or give me a call if you want further explanation. Hit OK, and now you can see filling out my site farther and farther here. Okay, still in the hatchet stage, still swiping through this thing with a hatchet. Another thing I need to do is I need to add a boundary. This is pulling all across these guys' lots, and if we start grading this guy's house out, he's not going to be too happy. So I want to add a boundary to this. the easiest way to do that is I can use this feature line that I already have. So this feature line is all the way up here at grade. It's a 3D feature line. You can see it selected, and it was already draped onto the surface. I already did these steps to speed things along. I just want to offset this out and down. So if I use my normal AutoCAD offset command, it will just offset the feature line out, and it won't change any of the elevations, which I need it to. So this is another little trick or tip here. I'm going to use my step offset under the feature line toolbar, and I'm going to tell it to offset it 1/10 of a foot. Okay, grab this feature line, tell it to go to the outside, and instead of telling it to do a grade, an elevate, or a distance or variable, I'm going to tell it to specify a constant elevation for all the little points. So hit E for elevation, and then hit 0. And what you notice here, it says the value must be a non-zero. Sort of weird, but that's how it is. So I'm just going to set it to 1. So it's going to be 1 foot above ground. So hit OK. Give it a second. And that offsets that feature line just to the outside. Okay, and you can see it down here now. So it offset it out 1/10, and it set all the elevations along that entire feature line to one elevation, which is 1 foot above mean sea level, I guess. And the reason I did that is that I need to get this feature line to be a polyline. If I look in my AutoCAD properties bar, this is still a feature line yet. But any feature line that has constant elevation throughout it, if you explode it, so I grabbed that feature line and exploded it, notice my elevation points go away. And now if I look at this polyline, or grab that line work, it's now a polyline, no longer a feature line. Well, now that this is a polyline, I can actually use this for my boundary. So I would do the same thing. There's actually 2 segments. There's a segment down here. It's pretty long. And then there was another segment on the high side, and I'd have to draw a polyline across to connect them all together. And what I would ultimately get is this boundary. So I can click that. Hopefully you can see that. At least the vertices. This is a boundary. Put it on my 21 boundary layer. It goes all the way around the site. Okay? So I'm going to go to my FG surface. I'm going to right-click on that. Hit Add Boundary. I'm going to make it destructive, meaning that if it will not let the surface triangulate across the boundary. By default, that's how Land Desktop was. It was always a destructive boundary by default. For some reason in Civil 3D, they switched it up that non-destructive is always checked on. Well, with non-destructive checked on, that means it will triangulate across out into this area, say down here, but it won't show contours out that far. It sort of just trims the contours. Well, we don't want it to even triangulate, so I'm going to uncheck that. I do have some arcs in this boundary. I have an arc down here. So I want to set my mid-ordinate distance so that works appropriately. If you have any arcs in your polyline that you're going to use for your boundary, you need to set that mid-ordinate distance to 0.01. And I'm just going to call this outer. Hit Add. All right, now we got a trimmed off surface here. To make things look a little prettier, maybe you need to send this out to your boss, or you want to have a printout to start looking at some things. Let's smoothen it up a little bit. To make this surface more smooth, I can right-click on Edits again, and I can hit this Surface Smooth command, or the Surface Smooth Edit. And in this dialog, I'm going to leave it, basically the top 2 methods, I'm going to leave those the same. I'm going to come down here to Select Output Region. Still in the hatchet mode, so I'm just going to click the ellipsis button here and tell it to use the entire surface. I'm going to click the surface, hit OK, and then I'm going to tell it X and Y grid spacing. Oops, didn't select it. Hit S for surface, sorry. X and Y grid spacing, it shows me it's going to add about 3,000 points. No big deal. So hit OK, and you can see my surface smooths out pretty nice, you know, something that's at least presentable. But again, we're still in the hatchet phase here. So we have something that looks pretty decent, but now we're going to use that to make adjustments. Really, at this point, I want to see where I'm at with cut and fill volumes. So I'm going to take this FG surface, and I'm going to shrink it up here. I did hit a save, so it's recalculating everything. And I'm going to make 2 more surfaces for this project again. I'm going to hit right-click on surface, hit create surface, and call this EG subgrade. Set it to no display. Create another surface called FG subgrade, and set that to no display as well. So why did I make these 2 surfaces? Well, typically when you're doing a cut and fill volume, you take out, you know, they're going to take the topsoil off the existing grade. They're going to stockpile it somewhere. Then they're going to go in and do their mass earthwork, is what we're looking for volume right now. And then they're going to take that topsoil and either sell some of it or spread it out on the site, or, you know, they're going to put it on the lawns first as much as they can, and then get rid of the rest or use it somewhere or sell it. So I want to, you know, on this project, quote, quote, it had, let's say, 8 inches of topsoil they found out. So you look at your geotech logs or the soils books, and, you know, I'm just going to assume right now that this has 8 inches topsoil. You'd have to look into that. It could be more, it could be less. I worked on projects that have had no topsoil because it was so rocky. It's right side of a quarry, but no topsoil. So to make a surface that essentially reads the EG grade and subtracts 8 inches, I'm going to use this EG subgrade surface. Again, it's blank at this point. I'm going to paste in my EG surface. It's 08 EG for this project. So now this is my EG subgrade is an exact match of my EG surface, my existing grade. I'm going to do another edit and go down here and hit raise lower surface. And it says amount. If you look down here at the command prompt, it says amount to add to all elevations. I want to do negative 0.67, okay? And hit enter. I'm going to do the same thing for my FG. Go to my FG subgrade. I click on this, hit paste surface, paste in my FG. Right click on edit again, hit raise lower. And this, on my FG, I'm going to subtract out 1 foot. Your paved section is going to be at least 1 foot. Not so much for topsoil, so your paved section is probably around 14 inches. Topsoil is probably around 6 inches. So, you know, you can adjust it up or down. In doing this, it is important when you're looking at all these different surface pastes and everything that you look at the order in which all these things are being applied. So to step back, to digress for a second, this FG subgrade surface is the elevations of my FG, which is the contours you see, subtracted 1 foot. And you can validate any of that just by right-clicking on the surface and set it to, you know, this ref 02, and you can see the elevation differences in the surface. Now these are 1 foot contours, so you're going to see an exact 1 foot. Let me go show you the EG. That was probably a bad example because it just offsets everything 1 foot. Use my EG here. EG subgrade, ref 2, hit OK. And you can see the contour shift now. That's the difference between the 1 foot and 6 inches. Don't get caught up if you see them exactly over a match and you took off exactly 1 foot, then they would line up. They'd just be a contour elevation different. So you can validate that if you need to. Set this back to no display. Don't need to see it. And you know, this is all dynamic. So if survey changes the EG, this updates. If the corridor changes, it changes the corridor surface, which changes the FG surface, which will change this FG subgrade. Getting back to the order in which all this happens, it's an important thing. You need to right-click on surface and hit surface properties, and if you go to the definitions tab, these things are in a specific order, and these are the actions it's doing from top to bottom. So my paste is my paste from my corridor surface, then I added feature lines, then I added a boundary, and then I smoothed the surface out. Well, really my smooth should be above the boundary, okay? So you're not going to really see any change on the screen, but your boundary should be the very last thing. What does happen that can get you is if you go into surface properties, and if I remove these feature lines and re-add them in as break lines, they'll be at the bottom, because as stuff comes in, it goes to the bottom. Well, if I hit OK, and that's the situation, you're going to see your boundary won't work. And you'll call me and say, why doesn't my boundary work? Why doesn't my boundary work? Well, your boundaries doesn't work because if you go into surface properties here and look in the definitions tab, it's only applying the boundary to things above it. So it's applying the boundary to your corridor, and it's smoothing the corridor, then it's doing the boundary, and then you add in feature lines. So, that boundary needs to be on the bottom. Same thing as if your boundary or your added break lines are below your surface smooth. If you have that situation, you're going to get really nasty looking contours in this area. See that? So what you need to do is make sure your added break lines, all your added information that actually makes the surface, gives it elevation, should be at the very top. Then it should be your edits. You might have a bunch of edits. Then it should be your boundaries. Okay? So it's information, edits, boundaries from top to bottom. And you can use these arrows here to do that. This is something you couldn't do in 2008 Civil 3D. It was a real drag. But in 2009 you can now. Thank goodness. And hit OK. Let it rebuild there again. And just to save ourselves here, I'm going to set all these subgrade surfaces to automatic rebuild as well. Well, let's get some volumes here in this, and let's go up to my Civil 3D pull down here. Let's go to Surfaces, Utilities, and right here is my volumes. If you want to do volumes in a specific area, like certain lot volumes, or you want to bound a certain area, like I only want the volume for this pond, and you have this big, huge site, but you want to just get a volume for the pond. Maybe it's way farther off, and you want to make sure that balances itself. You'd use bounded volumes. That allows you to put a perimeter on it. If you use just a straight-up volumes command here, that's going to just compare two surfaces. That's all it's going to do. So it's going to the full extent of all the surfaces. So hit volumes. Brings up a little panorama here. I'm going to go up to the top here, create new volume entity or entry. My base is going to be my EG subgrade, so click that. Use my EG subgrade. And my comparison is going to be my FG subgrade. And once you select that, it's going to give you a cut and fill. You can put in, here's your rough cut, your rough fill. Here's your cut and fill factors, which would give you an adjusted cut and fill, so you can put in whatever you want here. Which for today's example, I'm going to leave it as a 1 because I don't want to give anybody any ideas of if I would put anything in there, you'd start using it, because that would just be my guess. You really need to look into that. And then it gives you a little graph. You see red, that means it's cut. That means you have dirt to get rid of. Green means fill. That means you need fill. To be imported from another site, so that's usually bad. Again, using these subgrades, this takes into account that the existing grade has dropped 6 inches and the proposed grade drops a foot, so that takes all that into account. And why, we got all to this stage, and it's like, okay, great. Well, what's really the advantage here? Well, the advantage is everything's linked together, so that I can come over to my profiles now. And let me just switch this view up here a little bit. Change that to plan view. And change this to, okay. So I have my, my profile here. And the blue line is actually where it was designed at. So let's set that to that blue line and see what we have now. Now, you keep in mind, this would be an iterative process. This is where you'd start moving things up and down. So I can slide that blue line up. My corridor automatically rebuilt, which automatically updated my site corridor surface, which automatically updated my FG surface here. Now I don't have that set to automatic rebuild, so I'll have to set that. So then I noticed, if you notice, I left this little panorama at the top. I haven't messed with this all that much, but unfortunately I don't see a way to have it set to automatic rebuild. So you actually have to click that every time to refresh it when you want to see a new volume. So just by bringing that up a little bit, you can see now I'm into fill. I need about 1,000 cubic feet of fill, so I'm right on target. 1,000 cubic feet in this site this large is nothing. So that was an adjustment there. Now, since I made that adjustment, you still need to keep things lined up for your roads coming into it here as well. Well, a trick there is to also pull a profile from that corridor surface. So let's do that, and we'll leave with that here. And the point is, this is where your time is spent on residential grading, getting these road profiles set. So the fastest way you can do that is where you're going to save the most amount of time. What I would also do here is, this is not acceptable. I need to come back in with a scalpel at this point. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time today. Only 2 minutes left. I would actually add in these, well, I do have time. I would add in these house elevations. So say I, go around and trace where the houses need to be. Look at here, go 2% up and set each first floor. So I can add those to the project or to that surface. Go into quick select, entities, multiple layer. This time I have those houses on a different layer here. Highlights all those. Going to come up to break lines, hit add, set this to 5.01, hit OK. Okay, see how it's really whacked it out? Well, the reason it did that is because I need to go into my surface properties, and I need to take this added break line set up above my edits. See, paste for my corridor, my added break lines, then my edits, then my boundary. Hit OK, hit rebuild there. That's going to automatically rebuild this FG subgrade. So I can come over here, get my cut and fill volume, and see where I'm at now. And you can see just by raising up these houses, which, this hill goes way down. Now I need 34,000 cubic yards of fill. So, it is sort of iterative at this point. You move things up and down and design it. That would be the design part. And then once you are pretty satisfied with your earthwork volumes, you come through, design out these intersections for this one and this one. Tweak, this is just a first floor pad. So, really this basement, this grade can come down as the house goes back, depending if you're on exposed basements or not. And as you're making these adjustments, keep this cut and fill volume up here, and or bring it back up in the next session, next day, and re-hit that and see where you're at. To leave off here, I told you I'd show one more little trick. When we move this road up and down, right here on this main drag, right about where the crest of the hill is a stub road coming in. So now that I move this up, I really need to adjust my stub road grade. Well, how do I even know where to tie it in? Well, luckily with Civil 3D, I can go into my profiles, pull down here, hit create profile from surface. I want to create that on my stub road alignment. This is the stub road. And I want to add in my site corridor. And I'm going to set the style on that to ref 01. It's just a reference surface. Hit OK, hit OK again. It immediately shows up on any of the profiles that I had cut for that. And you can see I have a pretty big discrepancy between where this needs to be. So if I grab the mid ordinate, or the mid snap here, hit B for base point, I can take that and bring that right up to grade. Of course, that's going to rebuild everything. That rebuilds the corridor, rebuilds this, rebuilds that, rebuilds everything. Go up to here, hit my cut and fill volume, see where I'm at now, and made a very small adjustment. So residential grading is really about a mix of using your corridor to the edge of the road. What I have found is you're only really using your corridor modeling to do the roadway itself, the typical section. Notice that, if I had sidewalk, maybe I'd do sidewalk. But I really don't go any farther than that. From there, you do this surface pasting trick, get your volumes pretty close, and then you're going to come through and use feature lines to grade out the rest of this, put details on the houses, do the driveways, maybe move these up and down. And as you move these up and down, what's great about it is it's all dynamically linked together. Is there any questions? Hopefully it was a worthwhile class. No questions either means it was good or bad. It's one of the extremes, not like eh. So hopefully you learned something with that. Hang out here a little bit to address questions. I do have a question from somebody here. I'll hang out a little bit, and I'll address this one question here in a second. You can always call me on the phone. I'll be at my desk, or go ahead and log questions. But thanks, everybody, for attending, and I will address this question here. If you want to jump off, go ahead. Should assemblies, road corridors, road profiles, main proposed sites, and all the residential same thing be drawn to streamline interactive? Should assemblies, road corridors, road profiles, and the main proposed surface in a residential be the same drawing to stream? Yeah, Charles is basically asking. I drew a lot of this stuff up all in the same file, and everything that you saw me draw, you're essentially going to have to keep that in the same file. I shouldn't say have to. You don't need to keep it in the same file. For a project of this size, or maybe 3 or 4 times this size, you'll be fine. What saves you there, Charles, is say I had a lot of streets, and it's just a lot. I can always come back into my corridor, and so every time I rebuild the corridor model, it takes forever because it has to recalculate everything if I change anything. I can always right-click on my corridor, hit Properties, and I can turn off it from calculating these 2 cul-de-sacs. So say I had, we did a project here, Meadows Hanover had tons and tons of streets, probably 20, 25 streets, I don't know. And I could turn off a majority of them, calculate or change some things here and there. Again, a way to speed things up too is you're going to at some points want to turn off the automatic rebuild stuff so that if you make any small change to your assembly, it doesn't recalculate everything. Most of the chain reaction, you can stop it by just turning off your rebuild automatic for your site corridor. But I can uncheck certain parts of my corridor and do that. Now, if you have some mega, like residential project, Toll Brothers, biggest, one of the biggest projects HRG has ever done or something, we might have to split things up a little bit more than that. But I would say a standard project. And it also depends on your computer. Not everybody's computer is the same. The people that are heavy into design have decent computers, but a lot of our engineers that didn't really use CAD in the past that are starting to now, their computers aren't really great. If you're questioning that, just call me. I have a list of what everybody's system has, and IS is working on that. We're trying to, we're in the budget freezes now and everything. Really need to start going to 64-bit systems, and that's something we're going to look at here in the next coming year. But that plays a lot on it. So hopefully that addresses your question somewhat. But yeah, I would keep everything in the same drawing. That's what I was talking about before. A lot of times your feature lines are in the same. Your feature lines for the grading aren't really in a grading file. They're in the corridor file because ultimately what you're trying to build is this FG. So if you break things apart in all these drawings, you have to interact with a lot of drawings just to build this one FG surface. All right, if I don't see anything else, I'll just hang out here for a little bit, and thanks everybody for attending.